Vamos a dar la bienvenida a Elizabeth Nelson. Elizabeth es cofundadora de la certificación de edificios inteligentes y jefa de investigación e innovación. Es autora de Healthy Office Revolution. Fue nombrada en 2020 una de las 10 mujeres destacadas en Future Proof. Su conferencia se llama ¿Por qué el trabajo saludable es inteligente? Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
How are you? Where are you calling us from, Elizabeth?
Just outside of Amsterdam. So, so hello from Amsterdam.
Okay, it's great to have you here in our WORKTECH LATAM conference. So, Elizabeth, just for you to know, you will have 30 minutes for your full conference. Then we will be gathering the questions from the audience. So we will have a time after you finish, so we can have some Q&A session. Is that okay?
Perfect. Sounds great.
Okay, no further things then, so the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm honored to be here. I love hearing what's going on within Latin America and challenging the way that we work and looking at a better way to do things. So I'm honored to be part of the conversation. Although I never thought I would be part of this conversation, to be honest. I think, like a lot of young people, when I got my first job or my first dream job, I thought I had it made and that I was, covered in gold dust, as they say, right? But what happened was, and I'm going to tell you a little bit of my story. I got my dream job at a top advertising agency where it was this amazing building. It was modeled after Andy Warhol's factory, which was this amazing artist studio kind of space, and fantastic. And the work that they did was incredible. They worked on Nike and Starbucks and Coca-Cola and EA Sports and all of these things. And I had just this fear from the moment I got there that they would realize I wasn't good enough to be working at this incredible space, but I loved it. I loved the people. I loved the energy that came with the place. At 5 p.m. when some people would be heading home, not that many, the sushi and the pizza would come in, and we would work late, and it was fantastic. And I started working all the time, and I was sending emails on the weekends when I could, and I was just in this sort of constant work mode, right, where I had to to help myself sleep a little bit better. I needed a wine before bed just to go to sleep, and I needed a coffee in the morning. And if you've had coffee in America, you know that it's not that good. So needing extra isn't that helpful. But it got me going, and I started feeling more emotional. And I'm Swedish originally from my family, so emotions are not something we're very good at. And I should have seen a lot of signs coming, and then I slept through part of a bikini wax. And if you think you just heard that wrong, yes, I just said that I fell asleep while people were ripping hundreds of hairs off of my legs. So you could tell that I was exhausted, and I needed to figure out what to do with that exhaustion. So in the US, like the majority of the world, burnout is something that is not diagnosed by a doctor. It's not something that is helped. It's not something that you go home and rest for a while. It's kind of the quitter's disease, right? We couldn't hack it. We didn't do it well enough. We're exhausted, and it's our own fault. So I worked during my burnout, and started to put together this plan because I didn't want to work like this anymore. But I also didn't want anyone else to work like this. And I thought that there was a better way that we could do this. So I started putting together a plan. This is the place where I was doing it. This is the beautiful agency and the dream job that I loved, and fantastic work people. Started putting together this plan of could I do research? Because I've always been a researcher. Could I research the way that we work? Could I look at a better way to do this? Could I change the environment? Could I find out more about myself? And I started to put together this research plan and study some people who were doing it right, but also screwing it up. The Dutch. The Dutch people have some of the best work-life balance in the world. They have very high happiness levels. They have a lot of different things that do really well with happiness at work. But their burnout rates were going up. So I wanted to study what were they doing right and what were they doing wrong. and put together this huge research study with CBRE and some of the other some other companies to do a huge study of the way that we work, changing the environment, changing how we interact with people, using cool technology, getting experiments in there to analyze this. And what I ended up doing was this fantastic longitudinal study. And people ask me why I did it. And the truth is, when you burn out because of a bikini wax and then you put together a huge study in Europe, people say that might make for a good book. So I wrote a book called The Healthy Office Revolution. It's not the one on the top. It's the red one right below. It's not Michelle Obama's book, of course, but I thought that maybe this was the closest I would ever get to her. So I ran home because I didn't have my phone with me and took a picture of my book next to Michelle Obama's, which made me very happy. But this is my book, the red one below, The Healthy Office Revolution, and talks about my story and working in a job that I love and yet still burning out, and then putting together this amazing research that we did with CBRE. And now we've done lots and lots of different researches with lots of different companies where we looked at how we work and what works best. So the number one complaint in offices is sleep. One of the biggest things in burnout, not complaints, is sleep. So the three things with burnout are sleep, feelings of stress, and feelings of control or empowerment, right? And why are those three interesting? Because they relate to each other. If we're really stressed, do we sleep well? No. If we aren't feeling in control, does that make us stressed? Absolutely. So they build on each other and they start to snowball in the wrong direction or maybe the right direction, where if we are in a great situation, we do that. Now, on average, we should sleep between 7 and 9 hours a night. And this will give us the rest that we need, the recuperation from our day. It allows our brain to process everything that happened that day. It allows our body to heal. 7 and 9 hours every day, not catching up on the weekends. In fact, they say if you are catching up on the weekends, it's a sign that you're sleep deprived. But doing that, so used to be about 10 years ago that we slept about 8 hours a night. Perfect, right? Just the right amount. Now we get about an hour less of sleep. So we're right barely on that cusp of 7 hours. And what's worse, the quality of our sleep has gone down. What do I mean by that? So that means that we're waking up multiple times in the night, where we're sleeping lightly, where we're not reaching that REM sleep, where we're really processing and getting dreaming or past dreaming, this kind of thing. So the deep quality of sleep for 8 hours is what most of us need. Now, there are such people who are called short sleepers, and they're kind of amazing. When I heard about them, I tried to see if I could become a short sleeper. But we can't. Some people are born and they're just genetically made to somehow get as much deep sleep as most of us get in 8 hours in 4. So that's kind of made for the type of culture we have now, right? This idea that we don't need to sleep very much, and yet we're really well rested and ready for the day and ready to go. And there was this time a few years ago where CEOs were kind of bragging about their CEO schedule, right? Getting up at 4, having a workout, starting doing emails before their first meeting still very early in the day, and then doing it all over again and encouraging people to actually sleep less. When in truth, most of these people are short sleepers, and the last thing any of the rest of us is to be told to sleep less. Now, so sleep is a really interesting factor. It's also interesting because at the agency I was at, they had sleeping rooms back in the day, and what ended up happening was that people had sex in the sleeping rooms. And so they closed them up and they used them as storage containers and extra storage. What is interesting about this, especially when you're talking about American culture and in the US, where you're talking about the work culture, And considering, these are places where people are getting all 3 meals at the workplace. They're spending all of their awake hours at the workplace. They have all of their friends at their workplace. They do their shopping comes to the workplace. They do everything out of there. If that's true, then is it fair to say that you shouldn't be having sex at the office? Now, I'm not by any means saying that we should all start having sex at the office, but we need to have a balanced life where we can go home and date or be with our loved ones. And love and connection is so important to the human brain and happy hormones. And really, the last thing we want people who are overworked and overstressed and underslept and all of this is for them to not be having the happy hormones that come with the connection to the people that we love, whether that's just being around our family or whether that's being intimate. So that's my 2 cents on that, on sleep. Now, sound is the number 1 complaint in the office. And it is one of the things that we're looking at, but it's also kind of an interesting thing. So the number 1 complaint is sound. The number 2 complaint is temperature. This is usually related to the fact that men like temperature a little bit cooler, maybe because of what they're wearing in the office or just their body dynamics. And then women like it a little bit warmer and more comfortable. I'm biased on that, so I can't say much about that. But so sound is this really interesting construct within the workplace environment. And it's something that we studied with Booking.com. Their headquarters is here in Amsterdam. And what they were actually playing with was they had so many people complaining about sound that they were either going to get like 3,000 noise canceling headphones, or they were going to do an experiment where they looked at, is there something we can do with the space so that people stop complaining about sound? So they did the experiment with me and our company. We put technology everywhere. We rotated people over months through different work environments. We did interviews with them. We did surveys with them. We measured everything, these coders that were building the site and also coding different other things. How much code did they do? The accuracy of that. It's so cool. And what we found out were a few things. One, sound was incredibly important, and it was distance between workstations that did the best thing, and distance from the work area to the other areas. So having sound barriers in there were hugely beneficial. We also found out some things that were kind of happy accidents. So I put something in there that I was so proud of. We had these individual work rooms, really nice rooms that could fit 1 or 2 people, but mostly it was for 1 person working in that area for deep focus work, where it was clear that they were working on their own. They didn't want to be disturbed, and they wouldn't be. And I was so proud of this as an introvert myself, because that's something that I would really enjoy. But what we didn't account for was different profiles. So what happened was people who were morning people came in, they took over the offices, they did their 2 hours of work and emails and that sort of thing. And then they wanted to get out and talk to everyone, because the morning people actually were more extroverted and they wanted to talk with their colleagues and work with them. So it brought us to this idea of personas within the workplace. And we did a huge analysis and study on personas. And I think maybe it's interesting because we've now applied it to a lot of other places, and we know what personas do really well in the workplace right now. So I'm going to ask you to hold up your hand, or at least keep track of what I'm saying. So I want you to keep your hand up if you are a morning person. Keep your hand up if you are also an extrovert. Keep your hand up if you are not bothered or disrupted easily by sound disturbances or other people working close by. And keep your hand up if you are, if most of your job, more than 50% of your job, are meetings and collaborative events. So the people who are still holding their hand up, and I shouldn't be, I'm none of those things. The people who are holding their hands up, that is who workplaces are designed for. It is also who design workplaces. These are the people who design workplaces for the most part. These are also the people who do best in workplaces. They're more likely to reach managerial positions. They're more likely to take on more power and initiative. They're more likely to be promoted and do well and stay longer in the company. Why is this? They're just more comfortable in that environment. So one thing that they've talked about is this idea of morning people versus afternoon people. People who are naturally wake up later, who have to set an alarm and wake up early and go to the office, they're actually working in this sort of constant jet lag. We're working in a time zone that they're not comfortable in. And so when you combine that with the fact that these people are also often introverted and sensitive to sound and more likely to go for deep focus works, you have this sort of very uncomfortable situation that they are fighting against their environment that they're working in and the way that they're trying to work versus people who are working in a way that's well designed for them. So this idea of personas is incredibly powerful when we look at the way that we all work. And I'm not on the fortunate side of that one, but I am a good voice then for teams that are looking to design workplaces and a good advocate for how do we include different and diverse workspaces for the different profiles. And what was so powerful about what we did with Booking.com is that we actually assigned, we said, these roles are most likely these people. These roles are most likely these people. And we could actually break down and make plannings for when departments moved within the company or in the space that they use. Very, very wonderful and powerful things. Biophilic design, or having nature around us, is a better way to say it. Having nature around us is incredibly powerful. It lowers anxiety. It helps improve sleep, makes people healthier, happier, and they've used it in different hospitals. So there's been this idea of moving. This is a chemotherapy ward where people receive chemotherapy outside in a garden, actually, and they see with that experiment the same thing they see with other hospital integrations of having nature and green around. People heal faster, they're more positive, they're more patient with the process, they can expect better outcomes. This is incredibly fantastic thing. We also spoke with some people who give medicine before surgery, the anesthesiologist, and they say when they work in a place with large amounts of green in there, they can often give people less medicine before surgery, which is of course safer, because people's heart rates are lower. They're less nervous, they're less stressed. Isn't that amazing? And this particular place had an incredible side effect where the families of people having chemotherapy were more likely to come and sit with them during that treatment. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that wonderful? Another example is this. This is the Nature House in Sweden, and I very much recommend you to look into this house. There's a nice short documentary about it as well. This happened as a complete experiment, and it is absolutely revolutionized. You know what I'm trying to say. The way that Swedes are looking at houses now, many, many years later. So this was a Swedish man who was a doctor who wanted to build a log cabin, a traditional log cabin in the woods in a very cold part of Sweden. And then his wife had twins, and he stopped sleeping and couldn't get it done. And he definitely couldn't get it done in the winters when it was frozen. So he decided to build a greenhouse around the log cabin. And what happened next was this series of experiments where he ended up building a completely off-grid, sustainable, very nature-driven house that is now was challenging all of the laws in Sweden, and now it being embraced as a new standard for a different and better way of living. So I absolutely recommend you looking into this. And I also recommend that we just start experimenting. You know, with smart building certification, we very much believe in we have to get started with technology and with data. We have to start experimenting with this and looking at how to improve, because there's so many options. And this is not a one-size-fits-all And what we're seeing are these mad scientists come out of an everyday person where they just say, oh, and we're trying this, and it's an incredible journey to get started on. Lighting. So we've done a lot of experimenting with lighting where, I'm in Amsterdam. It can be very, very dark, very early in the evening, and lighting is something that affects mood, sleep, all of this kind of thing. And what we've seen with lighting is there's amazing possibilities with having the circadian lighting. So having the right amount of light at the right time, not all day long, not very bright, because then we'll be too spun up and little off of our schedule. But it's something that can, it can help with seasonal affective disorders. It can help with mood and different things. So lighting either with a lot of the solutions that are coming out now to give real looking skylights or real looking lighting coming out of the walls, or using natural light, which of course is best in the end. So amazing things coming out there. Nourishment. I love this slide. I always like to brag that I'm talking about cocaine in my talks. Sex, drugs, and happy hormones, right? So what's really interesting about our work culture is so many workplaces have this standard of a couple of things at the office, right? We have coffee, or sometimes tea, and then we have sugar. And doctors have very strong thoughts about sugar. So if you're looking at the way that sugar affects the brain and the way that cocaine affects the brain, it's almost identical, actually. And it's almost identical in the spot that it affects the brain. But what's interesting is that doctors say that cocaine is possibly 7 times more sugar is up to 7 times more addictive than cocaine. It reinforces that addictive nature. It has the highs, and then the kicks in for dopamine, and then the desire for more, and that it fuels that addictive tendency. So I think one of the things that we need to consider is what is the nutrition that we're putting out in the office, and how are we leaning into that? Now, mind and relaxation. This is an incredibly interesting topic to talk about as an American, because quite a few years ago, they started talking about mindfulness in the office and bringing it into offices that had weekly hours of employees working maybe 60 to 80 hours a week. So way more than it signed in their contract, and way more than they expected to. So I had a very conflicting feeling about mindfulness and relaxation. I, of course, love to get massages, but what is the responsibility, and what is that? And I felt that too often workplaces were saying, we're giving you an incredibly difficult situation, and we're going to teach you how to meditate so that you can deal with the incredibly difficult situation. So I did an experiment, and I ended up doing some rotating people between a stressful situation and a meditative situation. And what happened was, in short, I could quickly get people into a more relaxed situation, but I could even more quickly get people into a stressful situation. So how do we deal with this? And I was someone who had no power or authority over them. I was just a silly researcher. They could leave the experiment at any time, and yet I elevated their stress levels to very, very high very quickly. So I think we need to look at this mindfulness and meditation and that sort of thing with a critical eye. And what is the responsibility of the organization? There are some amazing things coming out where we do almost a passive installation to lower stress and lower anxiety. There's a great example here in Amsterdam where they took over an elevator and they made it natural. They made it a scene underwater. And as you go up, you go past the sunken pirate ship and the different fish, and you're around this. And how do we change places that all of us go anyway to decrease stress? How do we get the most stressed people to lower their stress instead of the people who are prone to go to a yoga class anyway? So how do we do that? And I think that's one of the interesting questions here. Activity. So activity is absolutely wonderful for our brains. Whenever we talk about moving around during the day, we look at lots of different researchers that have shown it decreases depression, it decreases sleep loss, it can give feelings of euphoria. Even activity is this amazing thing. Our body needs blood flow, and we need to move around, and sitting is absolutely detrimental to all of the organs in our body. So how do we better move our bodies? Now, what's really interesting with this, and something we're looking at with smart building certification, is this idea of moving people around the office is also, as it seems to be, a highly effective way to innovate companies. So how do we get people to meet the people they didn't know they wanted to meet in the office? And it's something they call serendipity. It's a fantastic strategy of getting people who are very different often, who work in different areas, but them coming together on an idea would be highly innovative, something that would be a competitive advantage, something that would put them and their company ahead. So this is very exciting to me, with this idea of designing spaces for people to literally run into each other, meet each other, and start working on new things. And this is something we're also seeing with different universities recommending things like not sitting with your team, sitting with people who work in completely different departments, and all different departments. So instead of spending the day where you say, oh, did you see the email from Tom? Yeah, did you book the meeting room for later this afternoon? You're with people who are working on totally different things. So when you talk about your work, they come at it from a widely different perspective, but most likely you get something totally new out of it. And I think that this is something that we need to lean into more in general, this idea of having different people working together. Now, a lot of research is coming out saying that getting diverse people, and I mean diverse in every sense of the word, people who just think differently than we do, to work with us. Because if you're a company and you have a team of 5 people and they all come up with the same ideas and their brains all think the same, maybe you're just overpaying for that idea, right? But when you have people that work together who are radically different, you will have some friction, of course, but you will also have new ideas. And that's something that the agency that I originally worked for really believed in. They would have a very creative but messy art director paired with a copywriter who is very OCD, clean, always on time, always precise, that kind of thing. And the first week they worked together was a mess, right? They said, oh, this guy, we're not on the same wavelength. What are we going to do? But then after that, we couldn't separate them. They were doing some of the best work of their lives, and they really loved the idea of this. And I think that's also a very exciting opportunity where we say, where we see somebody different from us and we say, oh my God, this might be my next great idea, or how wonderful would that be if encountering people who are different than us got us excited and said, oh, this is going to be good for me. So just something to think about. Culture. I think I just talked about this, but work culture is incredibly important, and I think it comes at it from both angles. So how do we deal with this as an individual and accepting, who we are, knowing ourselves? When do we like to work? How do we like to work? How do we get the best out of our ideas and our situations? And then organizations that work to find spaces and structures for nurturing that and having people find their way in a culture that creates a thriving culture in that way. And smart building certification definitely helps in that and believes in that. We have built a certification that is not, it's not expected. So most people, when they hear certification, they say, okay, share your checklist. Tell me what I need to complete for this. And then we'll go from there. But can that occur for a smart building certification? I don't think so. Smart is changing all the time, and we are doing so many more innovative things, and it also makes a difference that these technologies are speaking to each other and working together. And the way that we understand this data is something that we can digest and easily see and understand and react to. So the integrative design within these buildings is incredibly important. And maybe more importantly, the smartest building in the world needs to be the best building in the world. It cannot just be a potential of wiring and technology that has the potential to do that if you if you wanted to take action on it or this. It needs to be something that is collaborating with the people and building a thriving building. So we've created a benchmark system where you don't measure yourself against, let's say, an ideal that somebody came up with in a boardroom. You measure yourself based on our smartest building at that moment, which of course changes all the time. And that's wonderful that buildings are innovating so much. And you don't have to fit into a cookie cutter mold. You can have the same points, but in a very different way. You can have lots of technologies. You can have few technologies. It's about the outcome. What can you achieve with this building? And you also get certified on all of the different areas, not just an overall score, although you get that, but you get, for instance, with Corona, if you have leaned into a healthy environment and use technology and that, maybe you get a platinum within your environment, but you don't get, but you get a gold or a silver in building use. Maybe your sustainability initiatives and your building performance are something that you're working on. So you can lean into all of those different areas, your safety and security, that sort of thing, your collaboration. So we certify you on all those places, and we give help and nurture the process. We're also a community. We got started on this not because we knew it all, but we knew that we could build this amazing team and global team, actually, to work on this and challenge smart and push smart everywhere. So we work with every industry in the world. We're working with banks a lot to help get buildings assessed at a higher level, to push smart mortgages through, so you get a different and better mortgage because you have a smart building. We work with architects, builders, prop tech companies, other technology companies. We work with researchers, real estate consultancy agencies. Work with all of these different people, and we're building a community that is not only global, but it's going to be the largest in this area. So it's incredibly exciting for us to lean into sort of what is becoming a movement towards making buildings better through technology for the people in them. So I'm so excited to hear some questions if we have them. I am really excited to work more and more in this part of the world. I hear so many things coming out of it. We're growing this area every day, and I am just thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for being here with us today. So we have a few questions from the audience. One is, and I found this really interesting, it says, some studies say that the most annoying sound in corporative offices is the human voice and the conversations. How can we solve this issue with this current tendency of building open spaces?
Yep, amazing question. Love that. One thing that we found in our booking study, and this is not all-encompassing, is we found that variance was one of the biggest things that was disruptive. So this idea that people are very quiet for a while, and then somebody goes, "Hey, Tom, did you see the..." So going from a decibel level of 40 or 45 to a decibel level of 90, right, in a split second. So this idea of variance versus something more consistent, and that is supported by white noise, pink noise, this idea of keeping the noise sort of at a certain level for a long time. I think what we did with the Booking.com campus when we designed was we looked at how do we design spaces that are structurally protected to be certain sounds, and then design the spaces around it to nudge for the appropriate sound level. So we have the coffee corner, which is not next to the desks, and but it's in an area where people feel comfortable to talk, catch up, and communicate, which is so important, and the atrium presentations. So setting it up where the appropriate sound will be there at that space and nudge people towards what they're supposed to be doing in that space anyway. So I hope that answers it. But I absolutely applaud that question. I think it's a really important one to ask right now.
Yeah, actually. Well, and what about open spaces? So it's that a tendency that, I heard some studies also that maybe it's a tendency that it didn't work that well, or so well as it was thought that it was going to work. What are your thoughts about it?
I think the completely open space with no kind of safe sound areas, that doesn't work. I think we need some things where people can, we're also seeing that the bigger conference rooms are not used very often, and that actually we either need conference rooms that can be split in half so they stay small, or we have different nooks, which people seem to like anyway, finding their little nook in the office that is quiet and private and this kind of thing. So yes, I believe a space without any sound privacy or sound protection, I don't think it can work. No.
Okay, great. Thank you. And how can we bring, because we were talking about the certification for office buildings, but right now we are currently working mostly from home, or we will remain working that way. So which tips will you give to the audience so we can bring this smart building certification to our homes?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are some really simple technologies that you can bring into your home to look at, for instance, environment. How is the air quality? There have been some really interesting studies to say that some of the environments are actually not as healthy in our homes as the offices. So I think that mad scientist thing I was talking about before, getting some technology to measure your environment, getting some technology to measure the collaboration and how you're working together, and maybe learning a little bit more about yourself, that's a great way to start, I definitely think.
Okay. We can maybe just find some information in the website, right? So people need to know further regarding this?
Absolutely, and link to me on LinkedIn, go to smartbuildingcertification.com. You can register a project, you can register just if you want to talk, if you want to get in contact with us, absolutely.
And that will be great. So thank you so much, Elizabeth, for your time. I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.